Sometimes it's hard to find hope in the aftermath of historic and deadly flooding. But in White Sulphur Springs, at the edge of the city, hope has found a home.
It's wonderful to have a place to call home again.
Cherilyn Weichel is a new resident of Hope Village, a small community sprouting up for flood-affected residents. Weichel was forced to move after the flood covered her forever home in mold.
I lived where I lived since 1953. So that was a long time. And we built it, so you know that meant a lot too. But this is really nice.
Homes for White Sulphur Springs, along with the Greenbrier Valley Community Foundation, Main Street White Sulphur Springs, and other community partners are working toward filling this field with more than 40 homes for flood victims like Weichel. And volunteers have played a big part in that growth. Even today, 1 year later, you can still find them hammering away to give someone in need a home sweet home.
Our whole purpose, we serve the Lord, and we're able to serve the Lord by doing construction. There was a flood here. There's a need for homes to be built.
I just hope they don't think it was a burden for us, because we have fun the entire time. We're with an awesome group, and it's an awesome community from what we've seen.
Hope is what we hold on to when everything else disappears. And that's the story of Hope Village in White Sulphur, a place where a woman at almost 82 years young can start a new chapter.
Survivors are now in the rebuilding and healing process. One of them is a man from White Sulphur Springs named Ronnie Scott, who lost not only his home, but his wife.
WSLS 10's Allison Wickline met with Ronnie to see how his life has changed in the past year. She joins us now in the studio with that story. Allison.
Well, the June 2016 flood changed the lives of many West Virginians. In my hometown of White Sulphur, lives were lost. One of those was Ronnie Scott's wife, Belinda. I found Ronnie June 24th in shock from what had happened. Now, being from White Sulphur Springs myself, I knew Ronnie and knew how hard this loss would be for him and his family to overcome. His wife Belinda was in their house when it exploded. She was burnt and passed away soon after. Now, 1 year later, Ronnie is doing his best to move on. He has a new home in Hope Village. The tree Belinda clung to, waiting for rescue, is now a memorial. But Ronnie says the memories can still be haunting.
I got memories of it being paradise. I said, but I got it in my mind. It can be pure hell.
Mill Hill Drive, where Ronnie lived, is also where Michaela Phillips lived. She was the teenager swept away by flood waters. Ronnie says the decision to move back to White Sulphur Springs was a tough one. Hear his full story coming up tonight at 6. Back to you guys.
The story of White Sulphur Springs resident Ronnie Scott has been shared all over the country. It's the story of a man who lost not only his home, but his wife during the West Virginia flooding last year.
WSLS 10's Allison Wickline met with Ronnie this week to see how he's doing 1 year later. She joins us now live in the studio with the story. Allison?
Well, when the flood hit last year, I ventured back to my hometown. I found Ronnie, and from there, his story of loss and love became a story that I will follow for years to come. Now Ronnie is hitting a new milestone with the memory of his wife close.
He come down, he got a perfect angel.
The June 2016 flood brought loss to White Sulphur Springs. Loss of homes, loss of memories, loss of loved ones. Ronnie Scott knows loss. As floodwaters ravaged Mill Hill Drive, his house exploded. His wife Belinda inside. She fought to live, but in the end, the burns were just too much for her body to handle.
So I walk up beside the bed, and I can't touch her, the bed, or nothing. You know, I said, Belinda, I love you.
I found Ronnie June 24th in shock from what had happened. Being from White Sulphur Springs myself, I knew Ronnie, knew Belinda, knew how hard this loss would be for him and his family to overcome.
I know she...
You're okay.
She smiled down on me all day long.
But sometimes, in the midst of our hardest trials, we do overcome. The tree Belinda clung to for hours is now a memorial, part of Paisley Park. And Ronnie is getting ready to move into his new home in Hope Village.
It's a work in progress. And, you know, I've been a mechanic all my life, And it's kind of hard for me to pick out window blinds and curtains and bedspreads, and I never had to do that. That was always Belinda's department.
But Ronnie wasn't sure if White Sulphur Springs would ever be home again.
Somebody told me not too long ago that you're old White Sulphur Springs boy, and you're not going to be happy anywhere else. And he was right. He was really right.
So here we are 1 year later at a place of heartbreak where Ronnie can now come to heal. If you could say anything, one thing to Belinda, what would you say to her?
Hey, first thing I do is tell her I love her, I miss her, and I know one thing, she'll never be forgotten.
What a story.
Wow.
It's amazing. From the beginning, I mean, I saw him June 24th, did a couple follow-up stories, and then to come back again a year later, it's amazing to follow.
I know it's hard for you personally to be able to go there and to see that and tell that story.
It is, but I think it helped both of us. He always says that I helped him, and he helped me kind of get through it and navigate how to do the story. So I appreciate all of that.
Well, it's good perspective from somebody who lived there.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, thank you, and thank you to Ronnie for sharing the story.
Of course, of course.
All right. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm John Carlin.
And I'm Lindsay Ward. The June 2016 flood was both devastating and deadly for White Sulphur Springs.
During a disaster like that, a mayor has to navigate how to lead a city through recovery.
But as WSLS 10's Allison Wickline explains, the mayor of her hometown of White Sulphur had to help his city while dealing with a loss of his own.
In times of crisis, like the June 2016 floods, a mayor can move from just being a public official to being a source of hope for many that are hopeless. And that is the story of Mayor Lloyd Haynes here in White Sulphur Springs. Lloyd Haynes has a lot of love for White Sulphur Springs. He spent more than 50 years calling the city home, and he spent 4 years as mayor. But never in his wildest dreams or nightmares did Haynes imagine the deadly destruction that would hit his city.
I can't even explain how devastating it was. I mean, there's no way that I could have possibly prepared myself or anyone else for that kind of devastation.
But the hits for Mayor Haynes kept coming.
2 days after the flood, on the 25th, June 25th, my wife passed away. And that was devastating to me.
A man forced to lead his city through recovery, all the while processing the magnitude of his own loss.
My wife and I had been married for 54 years. And so losing her as my lifetime partner, that was difficult. And it still is.
Today, Haynes' time as mayor is coming to an end. The signs of his city's progress can be found in Hope Village and the multiple memorials off Main Street. Today, Haynes is hopeful that White Sulphur Springs will continue to recover, and the mayor-elect shares that hope.
This probably is a good opportunity for the citizens of White Sulphur to really see White Sulphur on the rise, and it's going to happen.
High hopes for a city built to survive. Mayor Haynes says after he leaves office July 1st, he plans to travel and spend some time with his kids and their families. But he says White Sulphur will always be home. In White Sulphur Springs, Allison Wickline, WSLS 10.
Tomorrow marks the 1 year anniversary of the deadly flooding that devastated parts of West Virginia.
A woman in White Sulphur Springs has made it her mission to memorialize those who didn't make it out of the flood. WSLS 10's Allison Wickline has that story for us from her hometown of White Sulphur.
This is a labor of love. It's a labor of love.
In the middle of White Sulphur Springs, just off Main Street, lies a tribute to people who died in last year's flooding.
Melissa Dykert was my sister-in-law.
After losing her sister-in-law and mother-in-law in the flood, Audrey Van Buren felt it in her heart to fight back against Mother Nature's force. She says she refused to let her hometown of more than 60 years sink into despair, instead giving them a place to mourn and to move forward.
Every citizen in White Sulphur knew every name that's on this wall. and we just really wanted to do something special for him.
Audrey had some help from local Boy Scout Cameron Zobrist and designer Josh Adamo.
Just got to watch those slide right there.
Not to mention the countless volunteers that circle in and out of the city. It may be a labor of love for Audrey, but it's also a sign of selflessness.
I've never seen anything like this, the devastation, but also I've never seen anything like the people that swarmed into White Sulphur after this flood. They swarmed in, they're not hundreds, but thousands.
It took about 6 weeks of hard work to take a place where feet of floodwater once flowed and turn it into a memorial for the ages. A memorial made up of rock from Howard's Creek, the same creek that leveled houses and left too many families with one less loved one.
I just hate to think that the flood, they lost their lives in the flood, and then someone's gonna just not think about them ever again. I want them, people who come here, to see and realize these are people just the same as us. It could have been any one of us.
There's a lot of emotion hidden in the shadows of these rocks, but also a lot of hope. Hope that a city can keep recovering and not let the water win. In White Sulphur Springs, Allison Wickline, WSLS 10.
Nearly 24 people lost their lives. 8 live just over the state border in White Sulphur Springs.
That's the hometown of WSLS 10's Allison Wickline, who joins us there live now. So, Allison, I can imagine it's been a pretty emotional day there on the ground.
It definitely has been. I would call it a bittersweet day here in White Sulphur Springs. The community is recovering. Today, tons of people showing up for ceremonies and dedications throughout town to honor those lost in the flood. But today is also a reminder that sometimes Mother Nature can take the ones we love most. For one mother, holding on to a piece of her daughter's past is helping her cope.
Michaela loved Mickey Mouse, everything Mickey Mouse. So I carry Mickey Mouse with me a lot. It just reminds me of her.
Do you think she's here today?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. She's here today.
Michaela was lost in the floodwaters after an extension cord her family had tied to themselves broke. And sadly, those stories are still finding a place here in White Sulphur. But the new memorials like Nicely Park are also helping ease that pain. In White Sulphur Springs, Allison Wickline, WSLS 10.